the Heat to under 100 points per game. Jokic he wasn't a liability. He was part of that defensive plan.
Heat 51 in the first half, 38 in the second half. They score 89, held all 4 losses under 100 points. This game held under 90 points. Nuggets win 94-89, get their first championship, 47 years. Let's break down some of the shooting. Was atrocious for the Heat. Worst from 3 for the Nuggets. We'll get to that in a second. 9 for 35 from 3 for the Heat, 25%. This is pretty bad. Not going to win a lot of games even in the regular season with that shooting. They drop 89 points. But when you look at the Nuggets, how poor they shot from 3, they were horrific. 5 for 28, 17.9%. They were terrible from the foul line, 13 for 23. They missed 10, and they scored 94. They should have won this by 20. If they had had any kind of good shooting. So it was the rebounding and the defense of the Denver Nuggets. I said it before and I'll say it again. The Heat looked exhausted. I think going to a mile high above sea level, going back to sea level is something to be said where you feel heavy, even though they had a couple of extra days off. It's a different feeling. It's an uneasy feeling. I played in Denver in the minor leagues. I played in the major leagues there. When you get there, all of a sudden, you feel sickly all the time. You're lightheaded all the time. And so then you get back to sea level, and it's like, now I feel dumpy. Now I just don't feel right. So because your body's, the equilibrium's thrown off. You're trying to get back normal. So for the Denver Nuggets, they've gone through it for years and years and years. A lot of these guys, Murray and Jokic, have played together for years. Their secondary guys had great games. Aaron Gordon did not have a great game, but he was great on defense. He scored 4 points. Jokic had 28. Porter Jr. had 16, which you needed that from him because Murray only had 14. But Caldwell Pope had 11, and then Bruce Brown had 10. I mean, it wasn't a great game for a championship game, but Jimmy Butler, 5 for 18 from the field, 2 for 5, wasn't atrocious from 3. But then when you looked at some of these other guys, Bam Adebayo had a great first half, terrible second half. As far as their three-point guys, and Vincent and Strus, 1 for 10. Yep. You have to. What did you tell me the other day when they scored a whole bunch? They were like 16 for 32 or something.
I think it was 8 of 16, something like that. That was the efficiency that they needed.
Yeah, you have to be efficient. You have to score a bunch of points from your guys that get paid to be assassins. That's what I look at in the NBA right now. If you don't have great three-point shooters, and I don't care if it's the regular season or the postseason, you're not going to be in a lot of games late. And you're going to have to all of a sudden look for and ones. You're going to have to look for second and third chances. That's where cleaning up the boards for the Nuggets, they're far superior to the Heat. They could not get a lot of second chances in the second half last night.
And I was looking for numbers that would have pointed me towards, okay, this is why it was a 5-point game. Yep. I think one of the reasons that Miami was even able to keep it as close as they were was turnovers. They only turned the ball over 8 times. So they did maximize possessions, even though, shooting under 35% from the floor, under 30% from beyond the arc, that's just not going to get it done in a season-saving finals situation. And Denver did everything they could offensively to keep Miami in this game, and the Heat just could not take advantage. And think about all the oxygen we wasted on the show yesterday talking about Tyler Hero and the what-ifs and the what could be. And even though he was active, he still did not play, and that's just got to be such a frustrating turn for him because you're active, you're going through pregame warm-ups, and just didn't fall into the game plan for Eric Spoelstra.
Caleb Martin, who was so huge in the Boston series, really was a non-factor throughout this series. Kyle Lowry was a big factor, had 12 points last night, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple steals, but too little, too late. I mean, like I said, 51 points in the first half. They led at halftime. It looked like they were going to, go into the second half and make this a series. And Denver went in, and I don't even think it's adjustments. I think it's like, listen, guys, we got to tighten up a few things. We can't leave rebounds out there for them to take. We got to tighten up on Adebayo, and they did. And that, I think, is just a great team that deserves to win. I'm not going to get into all of what, the future speculation of how great this team is going to be because I know the Western Conference has some absolute beasts, and they're gonna retool and get better. They're already talking about the Heat getting Damian Lillard. because they think that they need another superstar to go with Jimmy Butler. I don't think that's enough to overcome the Celtics and the Bucks. Remember, the Heat were the lowest scoring team in the NBA this season. Their 20-game postseason was amazing, way better than their 82 regular season, and that happens. You just got to get there. So when I look at what this team, the number one seed, 20 games in the postseason, the 16 wins, you're the world champions. I don't think there was a better team in basketball this year than the Nuggets. But do I think next year there's not going to be the Bucks don't come back, or Boston doesn't get better, or Utah doesn't get better,
we
or
were
even
so
Phoenix?
Sure that Giannis was going to repeat and repeat and repeat.
Your MVP is down in Philadelphia, and Embiid. I mean, I think the parity is much better in the NBA than it was 10 years ago, and so I think it's difficult for the Nuggets to repeat next year.
And the Nuggets finished atop the Western Conference in the regular season,
right,
but there were 3 teams in the East that had better winning percentage.
Absolutely.
And you might think, okay, so the Nuggets had the 4th best win percentage during the regular season, but what that really means is what you said, Dibbs. The Western Conference is just more competitive.
Yes.
The East is top heavy. The West is top. There's no easy days in the
West is like the American League East.
Right. There's no easy game.
Exactly. There's no easy games. And like I said, even the Memphis Grizzlies, if they can figure out Ja Morant, who may get suspended for the entire season.
Yeah.
The Kings were better, but Kevin Durant can go anywhere and make a team better. He's such a great shooter. And that's the difference in games like that. If I have a Kevin Durant, and I don't even know Damian Lillard because I've never seen him in an NBA Finals. Has he ever been in the NBA Finals?
No.
So, I mean, to these guys that I think, okay, well, Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant or LeBron James or some guy, I need to make shots down the stretch. Jimmy Butler was supposed to be the guy for the Heat, and that just didn't happen. And it's no fault of his, and then I heard the McNutt lady today say, well, I don't think there's something right with Jimmy Butler. I think everybody's beat down at this point in the season. That I don't make excuses at this point in the season because I think everybody's run down, but when the chips were down, Jamal Murray would make big shots, or Jokic would make a good putback, and these guys, they pulled together. Their second 24 minutes was way better than the first 24 minutes last night.
I want to circle back to Caleb Martin because, as fans in this market would know, that if you're a Boston Celtics fan, that he averaged 19 points per game.
Destroyed them.
Destroyed them.
Yep.
Well, okay. I dove a little bit deeper into the numbers with Martin, and I think that the Heat did not use him appropriately in the sense that in their last 3 losses that you had Caleb Martin on the court, he was -5 in a loss where Miami lost by 15 points. So he was better for your team in 32 minutes than you were without him. When he was not on the court, you were outscored by 10. When he was on the court, you weren't. Last night was an extraordinary anomaly where Caleb Martin played 33 minutes, and again, you were outscored when it was all said and done, when the chips were on the table, but he was plus 13. When Caleb Martin was on the court, you outscored your opponent by 13 points, which means when he was not, you were outscored by 18 points. So for me, Martin, even though he only shot 4 of 9, had 10 points, there is something about him in your rotation that made your team better. And even though it wasn't the obvious 20 points per game that he was putting up in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Heat needed to lean on him a little bit more for whatever that intangible factor is, because he wasn't scoring as much, but your team was still playing far better with him on the court against these
9 from 3. But Kevin Love was in there for 14 minutes last night. He took 4 threes. He was 1 for 4.
But he was -11.
Right,
When
exactly.
Kevin Love,
he was not great on defense
in those
because
14
he's old.
minutes. In those
exactly.
14
so
minutes,
cost you a lot.
Right.
To try to have him make some shots. So I look at Eric Spoelstra, like you said, he's the one who's managing the minutes. They're looking at, okay, I got to put this guy out on the court, and he's going to take some threes, and I got to get him into the rotation kind of stuff. So this guy's got to sit. And so when you're making that decision to sit Caleb Martin, who was killing the Celtics, that's your coach. That's a coaching decision.
It is.
So you're saying I'm going to give up my defense for offense, and they just weren't capable of doing it.
Right.
And where I attribute this, and I say this to Ben all the time, I give credit where credit is due. Credit the Nuggets. Their defense had people in their face all the time. They were constantly on the board, so they weren't going to lose a lot of rebounds and give them second chance points and things like that. So those are some of the things that Spoelstra, he can't control. He can't control the hustle of the Nuggets. And I just think that's the mark of a true champion. So, yes, the Heat were amazing in the Eastern Conference Finals. They were amazing in the Eastern Conference playoffs. But when they got to play this particular team, they didn't match up well with them. And like you said, and the guy that got you there, now you stopped utilizing that guy. So you stopped with the guy that brought you there. You're like, well, now we're going to go in a different. That's shame on you.
Right.
Now you'll look back and you're like, man. So now you can't second guess and say, should we have used Caleb Martin differently? Yeah, you damn well should have, but you couldn't now.
Right. And I mean, that's us, with hindsight being 2020 and kind of knowing some of these numbers. But for Spoelstra, there's no denying how good of a coach he is. The fact that he led the
Bucks,
Bucks,
an outstanding
the
coach,
Heat,
the 8th seed,
past the Bucks, past the Celtics,
worst
incredible.
scoring team in the NBA. I mean, they gave up more points in the regular season than they scored.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that and I'm fascinated. And we look at in baseball, it's like the Miami Marlins. This is a terrible team, but they win. They find a way to win. I think that's coaching.
Yep.
That's coaching, keeping these guys in the game, keeping them as a family and on the same page. I give him a ton of credit. But I also think, listen, Jimmy Butler's the man. Jimmy Butler is a great example. Here's one thing I did want to talk about a little bit and to get off of the NBA fun. I think Jimmy Butler's a Hall of Famer. I think he deserves to go to the Hall of Fame one day. It pains me when you make a statement that he may regret 10, 20 years down the road. If I am inducted into the Hall of Fame, I'm not going. I hope he takes that back. Because a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this a lot too, you speak or say things when it's not a moment of clarity. And as things, you appreciate them more when you're out of the game a few years and then maybe 5, then 10 years down the road. And it's like, listen, you're going to the NBA and the NBA Hall of Fame. And you're like, nah, I said I wasn't go. Now it's principle.
Now I'm digging my heels in.
Now I'm digging my heels in. I hope he takes that back because, first of all, he deserves to have his moment someday if that happens. And you don't want to have a regret that I don't know if he's got a family. I don't know if he's got a wife. I'm not into his personal life, but I'm just saying, if you do have kids and you do have family that you would like to thank publicly for helping you get to where you are, you want to take that moment to do that. I've been to many, many baseball Hall of Fames, seen those guys up there, see when they go after they've been inducted and they're part of the moment. Is just as big for fans. And your fans love you more than you think. So right now, there could be a bitterness towards, I don't know, the media, the NBA. I don't know why he's upset with the Hall of Fame, what they possibly could have done to him at this point. But that's kind of a rash statement to make at the finals.
Can I have you guys react to a piece of sound from Jimmy Butler?
Sure.
It's been great. I've had some hell of teammates come through here and compete with me and give us the opportunity to win a championship, which I still believe with everything in me that we will do as a team here, as an organization, as a city in Miami. The 4 years have been great. It's always great to be wanted and loved and appreciated, and I don't think that that's going to change. But for the time being, like I just said to Nick, I'm grateful, man, that we made it here. Came up short, but I'm blessed. I'm fortunate.
Yeah, that.
It's mentally exhausting, and it's hard to listen to guys right after an awful moment like that in their careers.
Yeah, and it sounds like somebody piggybacking on the Hall of Fame discussion now, hearing that clip. This is someone who in 2016-17 played for the Bulls. The following year played for the Timberwolves, was traded to the Sixers, then signed with Miami. I mean, so it's really interesting in a league where you get to dictate your story arc as a star NBA player. You get to tell teams, okay, I want to be traded here, I want to go there. That Jimmy Butler's never been afforded that as a superstar. And now after 4 years with the Heat, where they've made multiple runs to the NBA Finals and haven't quite pulled it off, that's there's a lot of emotion in there, and you wonder whether what you were talking about with that maybe early disrespect of the Hall of Fame, maybe he's putting up walls to protect himself from the possibility that he doesn't go to Springfield and get inducted. And there's just a lot there where I think, this one of the interesting stories in the bubble season was Jimmy Butler, the coffee aficionado, right? I mean, he was the guy that was taking coffee orders and talked about after his career in basketball that he wants to be a gourmet coffee barista and kind of start his own project that way. I mean, there are layers to this guy. And, I think just taking it all as the sum of its parts, I think that clip we just heard fits into the person that we don't really know in Jimmy Butler.
Well, and I also think that this is a guy like Jokic that baseball doesn't define him. And Bill Russell, I loved Bill Russell, and I listened to a lot of his speeches, and that's one of the things he's like, listen, I was a basketball player, but that wasn't how I was defined as a human being. And I think Jimmy Butler is very much like that because he didn't expect to be where he is right now. He didn't expect to be, good in college.
Yeah, you're 30th overall pick at Marquette. If you imagine...
But came from Tyler Junior College before that.
Right.
So,
I'm going to go to play D1 ball in Milwaukee.
Right.
Do you ever think that you are going to be in multiple NBA finals?
No.
Making an argument to the Hall of Fame.
But like that, and that being said, doesn't want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. He's not impressed by you being impressed by him. And that's what drives him. He's got a different engine, and so that's why I'm saying for him, don't be too harsh on yourself. A lot of athletes are very insecure, myself included. You do a lot of things to yourself that people couldn't imagine, and there's a lot of depression, I think, in sports that people don't talk about. And I'm sure that at that moment, he's got to do something right now to get away from the sport, get away from this feeling, and come back and fall in love with the game in the offseason again. And because he's good for the game. He's good not just for the Miami fans, for fans like myself that love good athletes and want to see the best compete. And so it's hard because we talk about defining these guys and branding these guys and saying, well, this guy wears Nikes and this guy's an Adidas guy. And it's like, I don't think Jimmy Butler wants any of that attention. I think he just, Chris Sabo was very much like that. Chris Sabo was a guy that I don't want to talk about me. I don't want to talk about baseball. I just want to play. Yeah. Just let me go and do my thing and leave me the hell alone the rest of the time, including his teammates. I mean, I could tell you a ton of stories about Chris, and he still amazes me, and I'm almost 60 years old. Just saw him a couple weeks ago, and he was wonderful. And so it's just, you never know in this life what's going to happen 10, 20 years down the road.
And I just think that more than anything for Jimmy Butler to say basketball is it for him at 33 years old, the fact that he was somehow able to shoot over 50% from the field for the first time in his career, and he shot 54% this year. He's still growing. I mean, basketball is his thing. He loves it. And doesn't want to be distracted by anything outside of it.
I think he's upset that he couldn't get his teammates the championship.
Yep.
And, he's putting too much on himself. But we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Ben Darnell is going to join us. That's right, the other half of the Rob Dibble Show with Ben Darnell. He is in Vegas for the NHL Finals. Game 5. Vegas can wrap it up tonight against the Florida Panthers. We'll hear what he has to say. And is he enjoying his vacation out there? We'll be right back.